why didn't we just start out with Anatar to begin with? Everything's just backward and smushed together and out of order, and now they're doing Anatar. And how they decided to, I guess, kind of adjust not having Anatar in the first season, it feels like they're having to suspend disbelief in some regards when it comes to the intelligence of the other characters. So Gil-galad, when they find out, so everything is out in the open, Halbrand with Sauron. So Galadriel already warned Celebrimbor not to treat with Halbrand ever again. I think that was in season 1. But he didn't know who he was. She didn't bother to tell him that part at that time. So Gil-galad's going to send a message to Celebrimbor that Halbrand was Sauron. And at this point, I think Halbrand himself was in Mordor. He was with Adar, and he negotiated for his release. And somehow he, on horseback, got from Mordor to intercept the messenger that was going from, was it Lindon to Eregion? Which was a farther distance. And honestly, I don't know how that happened. So this deception happens basically because Celebrimbor didn't get the message from Gil-galad that Halbrand is Sauron. And we only see the messenger dead on the road and being carried away. Seems like a pretty important news or information, about Sauron's identity. So I would have maybe sent more than one messenger. And this is the problem too, because they've established quick travel, how it's really nothing to get from one place to another. It just makes no sense for the messenger not to have arrived to Celebrimbor before Sauron could intercept him. Because honestly, it just seems like a day trip. We've seen Elrond just travel back and forth like it's nothing, and this is why it's a problem of them just showcasing everyone just traveling around so fast across the map. Messenger fell off the horse, case closed, Sauron locked out. We don't know how they died. Yeah, they fell off, they got dispatched somehow. The messengers didn't arrive. It's very important news, and the fact that they've established that people can travel around so quickly, it's hard for me to believe that they didn't get there before Sauron did. Yeah, we're all over the map here in these places. They don't even say for sure or show for sure if it was Sauron that dispatched them. So if I'm to believe that, I'm trying to think of something that makes sense. So I don't believe that it's Sauron. How would he have known their exact location? And again, seeing him come freshly from imprisonment by Adar, somehow intercepted him on the road when he's already coming from Mordor. I just wish they would have definitively shown why they didn't make it. Was it Sauron? Was it an instrument to Sauron? Like, what happened? Because that's what the whole plot is based off of. His deception of Celebrimbor basically can happen just because Celebrimbor didn't get the news of Sauron's identity. I don't know how much time has to pass, but even in episode 3, you can at least see some time has passed. Do they not care that their messengers didn't make it back? See, the messengers were killed in episode 2, and so Halbrand shows up, and Celebrimbor just knows, okay, don't treat with him. All right, so he's not going to treat with him, he says. And Halbrand says, well, I'm just going to stay outside. I'm just going to stay right here. And I guess they're like, okay with that, him loitering around. So yeah, the story just happens because Celebrimbor didn't get the message, and I guess Gil-galad just doesn't care that his messengers never returned. It definitely feels like some time has passed. Some time. I mean, honestly, the progression of time is so all over the place. They do this thing where they show the map of Middle-earth, they show a location, and then they like jump to another location, and then, okay, we're there. That's how quick travel works. But it doesn't work when the plot, needs to move forward. I have to suspend disbelief that somehow the messengers died. I don't know how, maybe Sauron, but they don't show that. It just seems like a giant coincidence, unless you tell us that he found them as he just got released from Mordor. So traveling from Mordor, found the messengers somewhere, and then no one cares about that they never returned. And also, Halbrand gets in with Celebrimbor then, because he doesn't want to leave. And Celebrimbor is like, we gotta leave. No, I'm not gonna leave. Like, okay. Everyone has to be so dumbed down. Celebrimbor says to Halbrand, Galadriel told me not to treat with you, And then he says, "Oh, well, she said you say that." He somehow like alludes to the fact that they didn't tell you that the rings worked or not. So he says, "I know something that you don't when it comes to the rings," and that's what gets him. Oh, did the rings work? So the elven rings that have now cured the Middle Earth elf cancer thing. So they've cured all that. So they did work. Now that he mentioned that, now that Halbrand mentioned that the rings worked, I just couldn't help but think, why didn't they tell you that? Why didn't Gil-galad tell you, Celebrimbor, that the rings worked, that they put them on? So that's all I'm thinking of at that moment. Okay, so first of all, you were going to send the message that Halbrand was Sauron, but you also like weren't going to mention, oh yeah, the rings worked, you know, the thing that our whole race depends on staying in Middle-earth. We're just not going to tell him that part. So many coincidences. And also just the simplest forms of flattery is enough for these supposedly wise elves. So yeah, he just strokes his ego about, oh, the rings worked, they were magnificent, and Celebrimbor had to learn more about that because for some reason they didn't want to tell him that the rings were successful. So that's how he got in to Celebrimbor's good graces, even though he still knows that he's not to treat with Halbrand, whatever. So he then just reveals his form. He says, I'm an emissary of the Valar, and he goes and does this light display. He's Anatar, sharer of gifts, and changes his hair. People say that this is the best parts of the episodes, and I will say that's probably true. Like, he gives a good performance, Charlie Vickers, but that's not saying much. And we have very little parts that center around Sauron, and this is the whole thing. The whole thing is about the rings, and everything is out of order, and we're just told how deceptive Sauron is when what we do see just seems like simple flattery, and everyone else just having to be stupid to believe it. So just stroke his ego a bit, and that's enough to dismiss what Galadriel said and not confirm anything, not to do anything when it comes to communicating with Gil-galad and everything about the rings. It just doesn't seem like the master manipulator, master deceiver. And again, it's just everyone else has to be dumbed down for these simple deceptions to work. That's like my big problem when it comes to these particular scenes, which is a shame because this is when stuff is happening. This is, I think, what people most care about is Sauron and the rings, and they're not devoting enough time and effort to telling this story and to making it very sink your teeth into when it comes to the intrigue of it. But yeah, it just seems very like on the nose, superficial, and just very simple. The story just needed the messengers to not get there so Celebrimbor would know, and that's why he let Halbrand in. And Halbrand just does this light show and strokes his ego a bit, and that's okay. Now he's in the good graces of Celebrimbor, so that's how that happened.